This is what Texas looks like when it lets its hair down. It's a side of the Lone Star State you don't often see. But once a year, Galveston on the Gulf of Mexico bursts into 10 days of carnival, bringing some 300,000 people out onto the streets. But this time around, even Mardi Gras faces stiff competition. For sheer colour, excitement and unpredictability, well, nothing beats the Republican race for president.
There's only one person, and that's the Donald.
Thank you!
He's the man.
Why?
Because he has the vision for America. He's going to tell the people what he's going to do, and he's going to do it. Finally, we get someone that's not a politician. He's a businessman.
You hear that a lot round here.
Trump.
Why?
Because he tells it like it is. He's honest.
To those on the right who feel America has lost its way, become too liberal, too politically correct, or just too broken, Donald Trump is emerging as a hero.
Please welcome the next president of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
And whilst it's hard to know whether Trump is the symptom or the cause, his presence is ripping the grand old party apart. The Republican Party itself is in the midst of an identity crisis right now. There is deep mistrust of the institutions it espouses, government, corporations, banks, and of the people at its helm, the Bushes, the Romneys, the Ryans, who are seen as too establishment, too Washington. So the GOP's unenviable choice at this point is between a candidate hell-bent on destroying the party from within and a candidate that they pretty universally despise.
Hop in there, sir. You want your husband in?
Yes.
That latter figure is the Texas Senator Ted Cruz, conservative, fiercely intelligent, with an appeal to the evangelical right. He's been neck and neck with Trump in Iowa. He prides himself on being the one Washington hates.
We're at the edge of a cliff, and if we keep going another 4 or 8 more years, we risk doing irreparable damage to the greatest country in the history of the world.
Ted Cruz appealed to this crowd by telling them that Ronald Reagan was the candidate that Washington hated. He said, don't trust any candidate that tells you Washington's on their side. But yet this is a man who worked for the Supreme Court, worked for Bush, has attended the establishment in the form of Harvard and Princeton. He calls himself the anti-establishment candidate, and yet some would say he's very firmly part of it.
Are you taking off? Come on. Yeah, they're going with me.
He perhaps lacks some of the interpersonal skills that Trump has. Although family members, as we know, can be notoriously tricky to tame.
On a one-to-one basis, I'm very fond of Ted, but I think his public persona on the campaign trail, a lot of people find off-putting because he's so adamant about his positions, and he's reflecting the anger of the people.
Chuck Meyer knows Cruz well. He was running for Congress at the same time Cruz was running for Senate.
He's a guy that you wouldn't necessarily want to go down to the pub in England and have a pint with. But if you want him on your side as a fighter, you definitely would engage him.
Those who engage with him are predominantly those who are frustrated. The angriest, most pessimistic people here are the ones that we used to call middle Americans, the middle-aged, middle class, neither rich nor poor. You can measure their pessimism in the polls that ask about their expectations for their lives and for their children. And it's those blue-collar white workers that normally express the bleakest views. In Texas, that anger is intensified by a sense that Washington's doing nothing to help. Bob Truly, a retired dentist, now breeds Texas Longhorns. So they're not going to charge us?
Oh, no. You're safe with me.
He thinks the party has squandered its power.
The way the vote has gone in Congress, since we have a Republican majority in Congress, they just don't seem to be doing the job that we thought they were going to do when they were elected. And so there's a lot of the crossing over between the lines that I don't think the Republicans have taken advantage of.
We leave Texas and head for the snowy plains of Iowa, and I start to understand the scale of the party's dilemma. Republicans control the vast majority of legislative posts in this country, as well as the Senate and Congress. yet they don't feel they have control. They see the country moving to the left, gay marriage, Obamacare, the softening towards Iran. They're scared and they're divided on how to get it back.
We had this idea that you had the establishment on one hand and the base on the other. There are really two bases here. There's the ideological conservative base, and that's what Ted Cruz represents. And then there's the base that is being tapped into by Donald Trump and by Sarah Palin before him, which is much more about attitudes, about wanting to return to the past, about resentment of social change. And that is not something that's really based on conservative policy views. It's an attitude.
The American dream is slipping away. People have a right to be angry, but anger alone is not a plan.
And don't write off the establishment-friendly Marco Rubio, making a dig here at his angry rivals. Mainstream conservatives are looking to him to unify the party, but it's a big weight for relatively small shoulders. There's a sense the flicker of hope right now comes not from the prospective present, but from ghosts of the past. In his inaugural address, another Texas son, one George Herbert Walker Bush, spoke of 1,000 points of light. The old ideas, he said, are new again because they're timeless. It was a speech of community, of cohesion, a very different rhetoric from the kind we're hearing from Donald Trump or Ted Cruz today, who speak of exclusion, building walls, and of division. History may come to regard the result tonight as a mere footnote, but that wider question, whether the party can heal itself or must divide in two, well, that may not fade so fast.